Latanya Maria Ortega, and I have 3 children. My oldest is 12 years old. His name is Michael. My middle boy is Timoteo, and he is 10 years old. He'll be in the 5th grade. Michael will be in the 7th grade, and Talon is going to be in the 2nd grade. They all come to schools here in Marlatte. They're at Marlatte. My oldest, I'm trying to get him to Eisenhower. Next year, I'm going to move him from Anthony to Eisenhower, just because I think more diverse population of students and teachers. Also, I have a master's. I'm from New Mexico. I moved here to work on my doctorate at K-State. My master's degree was from the University of New Mexico, and I'll be hopefully done in a year and a half, or a year. Geez Louise, a year.
Awesome, congrats. So can you tell us a little bit about in New Mexico, the kind of education your children had? Was it bilingual education? And then how in here?
Oh, okay, so my oldest son was in a pre-K program, dual language, so 50% English, 50% Spanish pre-K program, which was really important to me because I wanted him to be bilingual. I wanted all of them to be bilingual. And then kindergarten through 2nd grade, he was in kindergarten. He was in New Mexico in Albuquerque, and then we moved to Las Vegas, New Mexico, where they did have a program, dual language program. It was a 90-10 program, so a little bit different. And then I started my middle boy. He was in an all English pre-K because they didn't have a dual language program. But then he started in a kindergarten dual language program. My daughter has not received any dual language program because when we moved here is when we started school with her. But I will say that, they had a strong, my 2 sons had in Las Vegas, they had 3 strong years or two strong years of dual language, and then the program started not to be as consistent, and I didn't feel that they should be in the program, since if a dual language program is not consistent, it will not be helpful for your students or for my children. And so I decided I needed to take them out of the dual language program. But so they're in English only, but I do still support the Spanish at home. So the 2 oldest know more Spanish. My daughter, she understands words, but my oldest is probably the most fluent, can read it, can write it. So he'll do well. I'm trying to get him to, when he gets into middle school and high school, to really take more Spanish courses, because he does really well in it. My middle boy, he has a learning disability. He's a dyslexic. So that's another reason why I took him out of the dual language program, because there's no support in the reading in either language. And so the school was just not functioning. And it wasn't until I came here that I knew something was going on. So when I came here is when I got him tested, and sure enough, he was dyslexic. I had that feeling. So
yeah. So for you as a parent, what would you say are the challenges you face when it comes to supporting your children and their culture and language in schools?
Well, in New Mexico, it was easy because the culture was all around me. The blend of culture of Mexican, Spanish, Native American. The Native American roots are, even though we're in Las Vegas and not near a pueblo, we still have a lot of influence of Native American and Mexican, Spanish, all of them intertwined. So Spanish is all around us in New Mexico. But here at home, here in Kansas, my dad's family is from Kansas, so we would go and see them in Middle Eastern Kansas, and then Northeastern Kansas. But my kids were born and raised in New Mexico, so it's a little bit different. So here it's a lot of using culture and language. Social studies here I'm finding has nothing really to do with anything about culture. The culture is culture is presented here, it's very superficial. There's not much about, I'll be honest. It's very superficial. It's a lot about me really making them understand the importance of culture and their language at home. At school, it's very superficial. It's very different. Culture is very involved in the schools in New Mexico. Here, culture is not part of the schools here. That's how I feel.
What would you recommend to our pre-service teachers in order to really build on the culture of students and create a culturally relevant pedagogy in the classroom?
I think that they need to, first of all, I don't know if you've introduced them that first chapter of the Django and the um, the critically sustaining pedagogy, the culturally sustaining pedagogy. Sorry, I can't find. I thought I had it with me. I think it's very important that they read chapter 1. Oh, if I could find you the chapter. I think that's very important because it gives you a really great understanding of what you need to do for your students. And it's not just your, for pre-service teachers, you need to know, again, those biographies of your students. Who are your students? What are the cultures in your classroom? And don't just cover Cinco de Mayo, or don't just Cinco de Mayo thinking that that's a next Spanish holiday or Hispanic holiday when it's actually not. It's an American holiday for themselves, you know, like September 16th is Mexican independence. So things of that sort, like really understanding who the Hispanic people are and African Americans. Martin Luther King Day is not just, it's just one day you celebrate. No, like you need to figure out who's in your classroom, what kind of cultures are in our world, making sure that our teachers and our students understand that not to tolerate people, like the word of tolerance. Okay, tolerance is good, but we have to understand others as well. So I think really understanding that Black History Month or Women's History Month, no, it should be spread out throughout the whole year, and figure out ways to find different types of cultural ways to, different ways to embed culture in their teaching.
And make it something that's throughout their teaching.
Yeah, throughout, not just like, oh, let's go this superficiality. No, it needs to be part of the culture of the classroom.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, and like I said, not just those fun stories. Oh, Martin Luther King did this. Okay, that's great. He did. He's a wonderful man. But what more? What else how has it impacted you today in this time today? You know, what is the impact? You know, using real world issues that are happening, and how does that relate back to something they can cover in the classroom? You know, even the plant cycle. Okay, plant cycle, Native Americans, how does that, you know, Native Americans, and going back, not just like, oh, the Native Americans, the Native Americans, you know, just, oh, the Pilgrims and Native Americans. No, what is the other story? You know, like different things, like there's two stories. I don't know, I'm kind of going all over the place, but I guess it's really important that your students don't just know one side of a story, don't just know the superficial. They need to understand that there are, the marginalized communities have their story too, and it should not be, their story is their story, not dominant culture's story to tell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for you, if you're attending a parent-teacher conference, what do you want teachers to be able to tell you about your children at a parent-teacher conference? Is it beyond just like, oh, here's their test scores?
No, I'm not. Test scores are just a number. I think as it's knowing them really knowing who my child is, social emotionally, understanding that maybe, you know, yes, you have a test score and you have, you know, like MTSS here in Manhattan. Some teachers just went by that MTSS, and here's this score and here's that score, and they're in this group and they're in that group. Okay, that's great to know. But I would like to know, what does it take for my child to get into a more advanced group? What other things are you doing besides this academic to help them go to that next stage? And do you have that ecology of care in your classroom to really know what my student needs, my child needs?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what do you think for future teachers is the most important thing for them to know as when working with parents?
Knowing that we cannot have a deficit view of our parents, that when students walk in, when parents walk in, you have to know who they are. You have to leave your biases at the door. If you have your biases and your assumptions of families, you need to understand where they come from. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. That me teaching other teachers as well, that's what I see. Teachers realizing after having more of a diverse class what their biases were. So I think that before these teachers get into the classroom, they need to understand their biases. They need to understand where do these biases come from? And it's not a bad thing to have these biases. It's not a bad thing to have these assumptions, but you need to understand, but they need to understand where they come from, and that if they have a type of judgment, that they need to understand where that comes from and get to know the families. Not just, oh, hi, how are you? No, go to the neighborhoods. Go find out, where do they live? What kind of stores do they go to? That's something that I would do, like, because I wasn't familiar with the culture I chose, because the culture I taught in first was a dominant Mexican community. And so I would make sure I would frequent the grocery stores, I'd frequent the places that they went, because I needed to understand their culture. So I needed to understand who their kids were. So again, especially now for this time of the pandemic, I think it's very important for them to understand that a lot of these kids may have been trying to survive socially, emotionally. They were trying to understand where, why is everybody's faces covered? Why are we at home? Why can't we go out? And then also thinking about, the access that they had. What kind of access did they have? If parents didn't feel that reading and writing were important one day, and they didn't get their packet done well, they're just trying to survive just like all of us. So I guess really looking at parents as humans, like we want to be looked at as well.
Exactly. And understanding that not all parents have the same level of ability to support at home, and they may not have the technology, like you said, the access, not even be able to help with packets, even to go get packets.
Oh, the packets. I just, that's all I gotta say is the packets. Like I saw Junction City had so much more interaction with their kids. I'm very upset. I'll be honest with you. I will be probably writing an email when this is all done, just saying, sorry, packets, there was no interaction. Oh, let's have a social hour. No. Like in different places around the country, they're posting every day, they're discussing and this and that. And I'm not trying to say that the teachers are bad. I'm not saying that at all, because the teachers tried. I think it's the system itself that was not prepared. It wasn't the teachers, it wasn't the parents. And who suffered? The teachers and the students. The teachers couldn't see their kids. The teachers couldn't help the kids. No, you cannot have a Zoom if, for individual help, or I don't even know what the reasoning was, because of the inequities. Well, then the system wasn't ready for the inequities.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my frustration, is that the teachers lost and the kids lost, and the system was not prepared. So I think that's the biggest thing, is to understand that, the teachers, if they go back to school, and I hope they don't feel like they ever failed their kids or failed anything, because they didn't. I think that we need to really take a hard look back at the system, back at the district, back at our teacher learning systems, and see what parents and teachers now could come together and really say, you know what, we were failed by the whole system, and this is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
I'm
much.
scared of
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Mark Elner. I'm so excited for him to join us and talk to us a little bit about the parent perspective. So Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having me, and I always enjoy doing this every year. So, I have 3 children, and they're all very different, and they are all at very different stages in their life. I have a sophomore in high school, an 8th grader girl, so a boy sophomore, a girl 8th grader, and I have a boy who is a 5th grader. And every one of them has had vastly different educational experiences. Our first experience going into it was with all my children are adopted from 2 of my children are adopted from Guatemala, just like Dr. Perez, and our daughters are the same age and everything, and close. And but going into education, as being an educator myself, I had pretty high expectations and kind of thought I knew what was going on. And my son went in, and he was doing great, having a good time, and we thought he was as perfect and normal as anybody could ever be. And I'll never forget our first grade first parent teacher conferences would be in like October, and basically us telling us his academics were ridiculously low. And I remember one of the comments was, by the end of the year they're supposed to be at this reading level of I, and they were thinking he might get to B. And again, it's amazing in that situation. You're like, this is a healthy young kid who's active, and seems smart to me, and, something's going on. And, we had right there, we kind of had to make that decision. Like, we became extremely involved. And not only do we have to become extremely involved in our son's education, but we had to become huge advocates. Because, a lot of the schools in general, I mean, they're understaffed in those things. And it was fun. The interesting thing about it was we were trying to get an IEP on him, and they really pushed back, no, let's not do an IEP. And we're like, man, let's find out what's going on. And the reality was they didn't want to, because of the amount of work, and it is a lot of work. I've been through these now, and I have 2 students on IEPs, 2 of my children. And what we found out, though, was Marcus dealt with a pretty severe anxiety, generalized anxiety. And what that caused him to do is just really kind of freeze up, not want to take chances, and stay away from hard work. And not, he not to say hard work, 'cause he worked his tail off, but he just struggled in academics. And especially when it came to testing, he is a horrible test taker. He has always been a horrible test taker. I was not a great test taker. And, it was just a kick in the head, I think, as a parent. So, we did everything, though. We kind of made sure we got some testing. We talked to the doctor. We did a whole bunch of things. And, the biggest thing we went to different psychologists and therapists. And, we're going to be the parents that we are not putting this kid on medication. That's so bad. And, we finally went to somebody, and, they just made a really clear point of, you've done everything. You're not the parents that jumped into this, because we really dealt with it all through first grade. We had to enroll him in Sylvan Learning Center, which was a great thing for him to kind of fill in the gaps, and kind of kept him where he needed to be. But at the end of the day, I spent almost $30,000 at Sylvan Learning Center in probably a 4-year period. I remember we got they were all excited. They did the big celebration for $500. And I said, doesn't that mean I've spent $25,000? And they were like, well, we don't want to talk about that. And I'm not sure how many parents can do that. We were in a position to be able to do that. But we went through it, and we finally put him in, I won't go into all the details. I could talk for hours about Marcus. And, but basically our lives were taken over by this anxiety with him. It basically would come home, kind of started in 2nd grade, where he would come home and our nights would basically be over. We would be working on stuff with him. We'd try to calm him down. He had all these fears. He couldn't sleep, worried that we were going to die, that we were going to run out of money, that, everything was a worry. And so we finally agreed to put him on some medication. And as we say, Marcus came back to us, the little kid that we knew and was great and funny. And that was in 2nd grade. And he's a 16-year-old and still takes his medication. And I tell you, it's, again, as somebody who would always say, I'd rather not put my kids on medication, Marcus would not be the kid he is today. Runs cross country, runs tracks, doing, keeping up in school, has plans to go to college. And, the interest, and then we found out once we took our focus and things calmed down with the anxiety, is he actually wound up having pretty bad, pretty ADHD. And the only way I'll describe it for your students, because I think this is something they'll see, is his teacher explained it to us one time. She gave us a project or a test they took that was 4 pages. First of all, don't give a test to kids that is 4 pages, elementary kids. But first page was fine. Second page was okay. The third page was kind of not really anything on there. And the fourth page was torn up into pieces.
Wow.
And that's a good way to describe ADHD. You're expecting a kid with ADHD who is focusing on everything else in the world. He sees his friends turning things in early. He's not getting done quickly. So, long story short, we hit a lot of stuff. And finally he got on ADHD medicine. And I'm going to tell you, like, again, there's a perception out there. I think that's becoming less and less of a negative that it used to be. And again, and you have to work to find out what works for them. But Marcus, to this day, and he knows, I can tell you at 8:30 if Marcus has taken his medicine or not. Marcus could tell you, and he's aware of it, and he's aware of how that impacts him in life and everything. So, that's Marcus, and we've had to stay on him. Nobody works harder at school than Marcus. Probably for less results. But he works his tail off and is great. My daughter Macy, she's your typical 14-year-old or almost 14-year-old girl who, she has it all there. She could do great in school if she wanted. And it's funny because last year as a 7th grader, she really didn't care and did okay. And this year she kind of just put her head down and worked and doing amazing this year. And so we really haven't had to deal with Macy a little bit, that much. We've kind of worked. I mean, Macy has your teenage issues, she deals with depression. She deals with anxiety a little bit. We've dealt with that. And then we have our youngest son, Miles. And Miles is born here in Kansas. And we're going to be seeing later on in life. It'll be interesting to see how that all impacted them. We basically grew up in a biracial family. We have 2 children from Guatemala, 1 child from Kansas, and 2 white parents. But Miles is the kid that kind of has it all naturally. Is naturally smart, naturally athletic, but he struggles on his effort. If we could get Miles to give the effort that Marcus does in school, it'd be amazing. But I think what my story shows with our kids is that every kid, and this is what I'm a professor up at K-State when I teach at the College of Ed, and every kid is different. And you can't expect anything from one person to the next. And, we can have models and we can have ideas, but reality is every single kid has to be treated differently. Mm-hmm. And it's really important that teachers pay attention to these IEPs. They're there for a reason. We have had to go in every single year with Marcus and explain the IEPs to the teachers. Every single year. Wow. Every year we've had to advocate for him. Every year we have to walk into the school and say, no, we told you he has to have learning center in the morning. And the counselor before has told you that, and you guys just went ahead and put him somewhere else. I mean, it's every year staying on top of that. And amazing, like to me with Marcus in 4th grade, he was struggling a little bit. And I talked at the parent teacher conference, talked to the teacher. And I said, well, have you read his IEP? And she didn't even know he had an IEP.
Oh, wow.
This year, he's really always had a pretty good help in math. And that's where he really struggles just because of the way math is, right? It's memorization, it's stress tests. And I went in and we had comments from all the other teachers on his IEP meeting, except for the math teacher. And that's where he was struggling the most. And he's always had a para in math, and he's required by law to have a para in math, and they didn't have one.
Oh my gosh.
And amazing, once he did that, he started doing better. So, not all kids, believe me, as a teacher, I know this, and as a person, I know this, not all kids are as lucky as my children to have somebody who will walk into a school and say, this is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And I will fight. We fought for 3 years an IEP. And after they agreed to get an IEP, we fought to get it done. It took, they used every single day of the allowance time to get it done, up until the day that we could have actually taken some legal action. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just, I talk to my students about this, and I know you do. Every student is different, and you might sit over there and say, Marcus, you're not doing well on tests, you're not studying, not realizing Marcus has probably studied more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And then you have Miles, who gets put into gifted math, but gets kicked out of gifted math because he just doesn't care. Based on his test scores, he gets kicked out of gifted math. So,
oh my gosh.
But go ahead.
What challenges do you, like you've talked about the IEP and some teachers not being aware of the IEP or not implementing it appropriately. What challenges would you say that as future pre-service teachers, our students should be aware of when it comes to things like that?
I think you just got to sit down and take a look at all your kids, and you got to recognize what's going on and realize what's going on. And you got to ask questions, and, again, it's a relationship building, right? It's with what we do with our students at the college level. You talk to them, I get to know who they are. So then I know, so now I know if Marcus is not, so Marcus is a great advisory teacher at the high school, I think. And he is he's also his English teacher. And he does a great job of, like, Marcus and I get each other. Mm-hmm. So, and this is what I would say on that. Don't compare kids. Don't compare what one kid could do. Like, just because a kid can do something up here as far as academics, that's not the comparison. That's a comparison to that kid. That's a comparison to that student, not the comparison to Marcus. You can't say, well, Marcus is not good because his score isn't here. Let's just say this. It's like this. If I go out and run with a 18-year-old college kid, we go on a jog. Even if I'm in really good shape, my heart rate is going to be a lot higher. I'm going to have to work a lot harder than that person is. And that's just the way it is. Some kids are like that. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because you have to get to know your kids. You have to know them like the back of your hand. I try to do that at the college level, and it gets hard. Communication with parents. If you know an issue, talk to them. Don't just say, I can figure this out, because I hate to walk into a room on an open house the first night, say, hey, my son has an IEP, he struggles with anxiety. I don't want that to be your preconceived notion, So I'm kind of putting a little bit on the teacher of an expectation. So I just think the biggest challenge is you got to get to know your kids and understand you can't compare them. They're not the same. I mean, I have 3 kids. If I compared them to each other, I'd have nightmares.
Yeah, definitely. So have you, as a parent of adopted children, had any issues when it comes to that in schools, or is there anything you would like teachers to know when working with children who are adopted?
Again, I think this is what I say about adoption. And adopted children's first memory is loss. They always have that in the back of their head that somebody abandoned them. No matter how, our kids both have great families. We're adopted into, they couldn't be any better, right? Mm-hmm. They're loved like nobody else. They're given every opportunity humanly possible. But somebody gave them up. And they know that. They're not, inexperienced to that. I would say, you have the expectations stay the same, all of that kind of stuff. No, but I would say know their story. Understand, don't just assume because my son's skin is dark, he's Mexican. He's not Mexican, he's Guatemalan.
Exactly.
Celebrate that a little bit though. Like Macy gets excited when, she does talk about Guatemala. She's done some research stuff on Guatemala. Mm-hmm. But understanding that, and just every kid, again, adopted kids are different. My kids are so open about it. They know about it. Their friends know about it. I would say in a younger school, it's, we've got some looks obviously in schools. So, but I think that is understanding there are some underlying issues that, we never know when those may come out. Yeah. We've sat there and walked down to a room with one of our children crying. Why? Well, they're thinking about their birth parents. They're thinking about their birth mom. And our daughter Macy deals with attachment disorder. So she's still, after she's been with us, she's gonna be 14 next week, and wondering, will we give her back? Wow. Do we really love her? And we have to talk through that. So those are things, but again, that's no different than you have a kid that deals with mental illness and, a kid that's being abused at home. There's just so many different things. So, just understand that there could be some stuff there. And let's just be honest, there's how you use your words, mm-hmm. The jokes of, oh yeah, my brother, when somebody jokes about saying their brother's adopted, or, you and Macy are so different, you must be adopted. If you don't know you make those comments, they mean something.
Yeah, definitely.
Use your words.
I guess the last question I would have for you is, what final tip would you have for our students? I mean, we talked about the importance of relationships, mm-hmm. Know your kids. As future teachers, they're going to go out into their classrooms, have a wide variety of students in front of them. What would be your biggest tip for them?
Flexibility. Know your content. Obviously, you got to have confidence in that, but the flexibility to change on the, not be scared to realize something's not working. I think one of the toughest things we get when we're new teachers, and again, I was there, and heck, I can remember, is, I made this plan and I'm sticking through the plan, and it just is falling all apart around me. And I'm like, but I made this plan, and it's the good plan. And I watched a student teacher one time, and it was just hysterical because I was watching, she did an activity, and this is a physical education class, a middle school physical education class. And she starts this activity and it is like all heck is breaking loose. Nobody's listening. I mean, it is just absolute chaos, but she never stopped the game. She just let it go. The activity continued going the whole class, and it was madness. And I could just see her. I could see the frustration. And of course, I'm watching her, so that's added more stress. And I'm just watching it. And finally, when she got done, I'm like, she comes over, she's like, oh my gosh, I should have done this. I should have done that. And I was like, why didn't you? Why didn't you stop and change? Always be willing to do that. And always be flexible, understanding, read kids. You know, in our classes, I have to read in a college class when a student starts to fall asleep, when a student's not paying attention. So I have to be willing to adjust my class, not really take offense to it. Be willing to take criticism, something that's really hard to do. I wasn't very good at it. I've gotten a lot better at it as I've gotten older. And learn, never stop learning, ask people. I walk around every day, and Dr. Perez can tell you, I mean, I'm in book clubs with you, and I do, my goal is I walk around and ask people, what are you doing here? How do you do this? Because don't think you know everything. You have to learn and never stop learning. Dr. Perez, we both have PhDs. We've been in school our whole life, and we continue every day to learn it. It might be little things. You know, it might be undergrad level things, but I go in and listen and learn. So, you know, that, and the last thing I will say is just love the heck out of your kids. Be positive with kids. Negativity will get you nowhere. I know that with my children. I know that with students that I've taught, students that I've coached, my own kid. I mean, you have got to do it. And I have one of my favorite quotes, and it's a coaching quote, but it's, you know, doesn't matter what you coach, it matters why you coach. And I kind of think that with teaching, you know, why do you teach? And so if you can, you know, and it's not for you, it's not to say parents love you and all that. It is literally for those kids, and you will get self-satisfaction out of it. But man, as I get older and I watch my children, and when you become a parent, you completely change as a teacher, but you've got to love it. And as a parent now, I can walk in and tell pretty quickly whether a teacher loves it or not. And whether they love those kids, because it's so important. I've just seen it with all this stuff. And I know you've talked about this, I'm sure, is that our kids have lost school and lost that contact. Totally different.
Yeah.
They've now their life is a computer and a packet of papers. It's not, you know, and I think that's, you know, when we teach online, for me, that's why I've made sure I keep meeting with my students so I can still show them that love, even though I'm not with them personally.
Exactly. And then I did have one follow-up question. You talked about you knew how to advocate for your children. You knew how to get that IEP in place, even though it took years of arguing the system. How would you advise teachers to support parents who may not be in the same position, who may not know how to advocate for their kids?
You know what, I'll tell you, one of the things I did is I called a friend of mine who was a special ed teacher, and we just were like, okay, we're doing this, give me my rights, give me my laws. So that's what I think goes into, you can't just know your class. You can't just know your subject. We talk about learning. You need to be talking to the special ed teacher. Even if you have a child that you suspect they're not in an IEP, you know, see what you can do. Maybe do some reach out to them. Now, here's the caveat on all that. Do the parents want the help? Do the parents want to be told their child needs an IEP? Now, you're going to deal with that as well. I know people that do that. And you know, at the end of the day, if a parent won't let it, you can't get that child special services. So you have to become that advocate. And, you know, I think talking to people, talking to the parents, see if you can get them in. And one thing, little advice for meeting with parents, always start with something positive. Never start off, hi, thanks for coming in, your kid needs an IEP. I learned that early on during my student teaching. This kid did something to me. He got in a lot of trouble in the class, and my cooperating teacher called the parent, and I sat and listened to him. And the first thing he said was like, hey, I just want to let you know, Johnny's been doing such a great job in class, and he does this, this, and this, and we're really happy to have him, but we had this incident. And I remember asking him after, and here's what he said. He goes, always start with something positive. And I always remembered that, because, parents get a call. I'll tell you what, Amanda Arnold pops up on my phone. I'm like, here we go. It's Miles. What do you do?
Yeah.
And so, you know, start with something positive, even if you have something negative coming. But I do think the biggest thing is just talking to the parents, talking to other resources in your school. And, you know, talk to other teachers, because other teachers, maybe they had their brother or sister in class, maybe they had them in class. But if you just go off and think, I'm going to fix this on my own, you know, and, you know, making your class a safe space for those parents to come in, let the parents know that you're welcome for them to come in. I'm gonna tell you, you know, a bad teacher when they don't want parents in the room.
Yeah.
I loved having parents in my, I mean, you know, I knew, hey, did it stress me a little bit, but I knew I was what I was doing, and I loved having parents in there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mark. You've been a wealth of
Absolutely.
information, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
Thank you so much. All right. You guys have a great time. Hey, Kaylee.
Okay. I'd like to welcome Kaylee Myers, who's going to give us some great insight as a parent dealing with a child who has food allergies. So Kaylee, go ahead and share with us, please.
Yes. So my name's Kaylee Myers, and my little girl, her name's Maddie, and she is in 5th grade this year. She's 10. And she's actually diagnosed with peanut allergy at age 1, exactly, on her first birthday. So we've been dealing with this a long time, and she also has added in the new nuts. So we have tree nuts and all kinds of stuff. So we avoid all nuts. And where this has become a real issue for me of just making sure that she's safe is when I first sent her to school. So I wanted to make sure that teachers were educated about, you know, what could she be around, if other kids brought food into the room, what that would look like for her. And it never was a problem for her, keeping her safe. I always felt like she was safe. But what we noticed then in 2nd grade, Maddie was really proactive about making sure she would ask if things had nuts and stuff. But then in 2nd grade, she got made fun of about it because the other kids couldn't have a candy in the classroom that somebody else had brought in. And so nobody could have it because Maddie couldn't. And a little boy said something to her. And ever since then, she really had a complex about it. So she really is sensitive if she's singled out about it. And I had many kids in my classes throughout my years of teaching that had food allergies. And now I look back and I think, oh, was I sensitive enough to their feelings? You don't think about that part of it. You just want to keep them safe. And that's what I made sure I did as a teacher. But I never thought of the emotional toll that being different could take, and that having a food allergy does make you different. So I asked Maddie what she would want teachers to know now if they had a child in their room. And she said she would want them to know not to announce it to everyone and not to point it out. Another thing that really bothers her as well is when snacks come in, like for birthday treats or something, and the teachers have let everybody know not to bring something that has that. But sometimes it ends up coming to school. And she said she feels like the odd one out when that happens. I always send a really good snack that the teacher keeps in her desk just in case those times happen, because they've happened so much on a regular basis. Even though, you know, you try not to. So she usually has these, you know, really good dipped Oreos or something, but she said she just feels different when she doesn't have what the other kids have.
Yeah.
But she understands, and she would want to keep herself safe too, but her feelings do get hurt.
Okay.
So.
And how have teachers responded to this? Do you feel like they've been sensitive enough to it, or have you had any problems?
Very. I've been really lucky because actually Maddie goes to the school that I taught in. So all of her teachers have been my friends. And the school nurse used to be an ER nurse, and she's my friend. So I know she's in really good hands with her. So that's been good. But I do remember past times when I was teaching before I had Maddie, and before I knew really much about food allergies. I remember other teachers. I had one next door to me in kindergarten, and she had a child with a peanut allergy, and she just acted like it was really. She was put off to have to deal with this. And I remember feeling really bad for that child and that mother that had that situation with her. And that's always stayed in my back of my mind to make sure people understand, this is serious. It's life threatening. And I think some people, they don't take it that way. And lots of times too, I've learned, this is new, and would be something to really be cognizant of as a teacher in the classroom. Some people think, well, they just have a mild allergy. They've never had a really bad reaction if they get hives or something. But what we have learned from allergists is you always have to be prepared for that one time. It could get a little worse. So you just don't know. And so you just take it like, it's life and death. So it's a lot more serious than I ever thought when I was teaching earlier on.
Yeah.
So
great. What would you say is most important for you as a parent when it comes to establishing those relationships with the teachers and with the students?
Yes, huge, because you have to feel comfortable leaving your child, no matter what their age is. And I think actually as Maddie's getting a little older, I'm even worrying more because there's just more exposure with kids and different things. And there's, less of that motherly or fatherly like teacher that would kind of hover over her and make sure she was safe in the bubble in her classroom, as now she's going to transition to middle school and high school. But just to kind of clear their mind, make sure everything's okay, and then also ease Maddie's mind because she gets really nervous about eating new things. They will text me, and they'll send me a picture of like the food label, and that way I can look at it and say, yeah, yes, it's okay, or no. And now that Maddie's gotten older, she can read a label like really well. Yeah. But sometimes they'll still just send it to me to double check for us to feel okay and say things are okay. Or her teachers are like this last year, her teacher was at the grocery store and she was getting some different snacks for the kids, and she kept sending me different food labels just to double check before she bought it. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
so
that is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
As a parent, I think
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, anytime. And if anybody else know. Yep.
Okay. That was great. Thank you. I'm going to check the recording. It was doing something weird. Like sometimes your lips weren't synced with the voice. So it looks a little odd. If it comes out where I can't hear it well, I might ask you to do it again. Would that be okay? I'll email you and let you know.
Yeah. Okay. Mine was okay on this end, but you keep freezing up.
Okay. Yeah, it would do that where it's like doing something weird, like almost an echo. So let me see. I don't know if it's supposedly they updated the internet on my end, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yours just doesn't have it. Okay. But yeah, well, thank you again, Kaylee. And any questions you have about your assignments or technology, let me know. And I'd definitely be happy to help. We can just chat or email or whatever you'd like.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that, because Mark and I have been talking about these summer classes and putting that together, and I'm like, but I said I got to get this Taylor stuff out of the way and figure things out. But so that would be helpful to know what's worked well and not for you.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
All righty.
Take care. It's good to see you. I've missed you.
I know. It's crazy. All right. Well, we'll touch base soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right, I'd like to welcome Holly Irvine with us today. She's going to talk from a parent's perspective, a little bit of insights and information she'd like to share with you. So Holly, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, all right. Let's see, as she said, I'm Holly Irvine. I have 4 children. and they're aged 14 down to 7. Our youngest, Julia, who is 7 in the first grade, she is a special needs child. And so she attends school at St. George Elementary, and she's in the high needs special ed classroom. She loves school. She loves first grade. She loves her friends and her teachers. And they do wonders over there to make sure that she is included as much as possible with her classmates and with the other children in the room. Trying to think what all, Della, do you have specific things that you want your students would want to know about? Oh, I lost your audio.
Sorry. Okay. So since my students are all going to be elementary first year teachers soon, any insights you can give them specifically on like what teachers did to help support you and Julia, like adjust to the school system, things that they did maybe really well that you really appreciated, or things that you wish they would have done that they haven't, any
Okay.
like that.
Okay. As far as her, I'll just kind of run through her day. She starts her day in the special ed classroom with her special ed teacher. She has paras full time. I think there are 5 or so that rotate throughout the day to be with her because it takes a lot of time and energy to help Julia throughout the day. So she does her language arts and math, essentially her academics are in the special ed classroom, but then in the afternoon, she is included with her first grade class for all of her specials and what they call theme, which I think is basically social studies and sciences and stuff like that. They explore different things each week, a different theme. She loves that. She has a para that goes with her to the regular classroom to do those things. Her friends, which she has friends now, and that's really exciting. You know, that was one of the big things that hit me when she started going to school was, oh my goodness, she actually has friends. They love her. They kind of rally around Julia, I guess. We've had this talk at conferences, how they not only like her, they have become somewhat protective of her. They understand that Julia's just Julia, and I think a lot of that is attributed to how the teachers approach teaching Julia, if that all makes sense. They include her, they talk to her like a normal child, they, you know, and so that sets the example for the other children in the classroom of, you know, how we're going to include someone with different needs. So that's one. The special ed teacher that she has is absolutely fabulous. She keeps in close contact as far as communication, and I make sure that I'm very responsive to whatever her needs are and whatever you know she's asking for or asking about, so that we're kind of working as I call it Team Julia, between the special ed teacher, the therapist, the regular classroom teacher, you know, all these different people who are in her life throughout the day. Really want to make sure they have what they need so that there's consistency, and also we're doing the best we all can to help Julia thrive, you know, and grow. Let's see what else we have. Like I said, we have 4 children. The others they attend a different school, but they love Julia, and they are her champions, so to speak. And they, you know, from the get-go, they know no different of what our life is like. You know, there's no alternative to, you know, they don't know a life without, wait, we're getting out the wheelchair, let's take her with us. We've got, you know, let's include and all that stuff. So that's great that they're growing up that way. So what else, Della?
So you said that she has a team that helps support her. How do you communicate with them? How do they communicate with you? Is it like via text, email? Do you do daily calls?
It's a little bit of everything. We definitely talk a little more at conferences and kind of have a, you know, during parent-teacher conferences, it's the special ed teacher as well as her regular ed teachers. And then also we've had, from time to time when they're available, a therapist sit into. It just depends. She receives physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. And then we also do private therapy. those 3 things plus a swallowing therapy because she doesn't swallow correctly. So they're all on board to be at conferences when they can. We also have, of course, the yearly IEP and the updates. I receive progress reports when it's time. I think it's every trimester over there. And then also emails when somebody needs to get a hold of me, and the occasional phone call, although emails have worked just fine for the most part. So yeah.
And you shared that your other children go to different school. Can you talk about why you decided to send Julia to a different school versus where Anna is? And Anna is my daughter's age, so they go to school together at the Catholic school. Get that info. But yeah, can you talk a little about your decision to send Julia to a different school?
Sure. The other 3, like Della said, they attend the Catholic school here in Manhattan. And when Julia was first starting out to go to school, it would have been preschool, I looked into seeing if she could attend the Catholic school, which is all the special services are provided by 383, but we live in the Rock Creek School District. And so because of that, she attends St. George. But I will say, I mean, I was a little bit at first, I just didn't know how it was all going to work. That was my biggest freak out was because I drive the kids, we live out of town. I drive the kids to school every day, the other 3. And then we had to figure out how to get Julia to St. George as well. So logistically, I didn't know how it was going to work. It's all worked beautifully. Everything is, there's one big route I take, and I would not change it for the world. The staff over there and the team that they have put together, they're just absolutely wonderful. When I was kind of in search of, trying to figure out this whole process, how this would work, I called 383 first to see if, they would allow her to attend school, and they said no because she's out of district. And then I called Rock Creek's, they have a co-op. So it's several districts working together for their special needs cooperative services. And the director there said, I understand your conundrum. I totally get it, but we would love to have her, and we will do wonderful things with her. And he has not proved me wrong so far. So I have no complaints, none at all.
That is awesome. Yeah. So you talked a little about the fact that Julia has an IEP. Can you talk about that process for you as a parent? What was it like to attend your first IEP meeting, and how has it been helpful to you, or has it been frustrating to you at all, the IEP?
Okay. It has not been frustrating at all. The goals that they've set about are all, I would say, attainable for Julia. I mean, they've really gotten to know her. And then even in the first one, they did the pre-evaluation, the screening and everything. And then I also told them what our experience had been as far as private therapy and the things that I saw from her, if that makes sense, what I had, what I observed. And so everything was they're very realistic about setting the goals, but also very optimistic about thinking that we can continue to move forward as we reach those goals. So my pediatrician told me one time, there is a definite balance between realism and optimism. You hope for the best in everything, but you have to be a little bit realistic. And I've learned that just as a parent, and many of you might as teachers. Your optimism can carry you a long way, but it can also be a little bit frustrating. Like, why aren't we getting there? Why isn't this happening? Well, we also have to have that level of realism and know our children, know our students, and
yeah, definitely. What have teachers done, or what would your recommendation be for future teachers to really make the classroom environment welcoming for Julia and make it a positive place for her to be and be excited to go to?
I think the biggest thing is just kind of including her as one of the other children, that at least in her situation, that's probably the biggest thing, because she's a very social child. She loves being around other people, and she loves being around other kids, especially kids. So, so that being very inclusive that way, you know, just making her feel welcome and speaking to her like she's a normal child and okay now. And one of the things that they have really, the regular classroom teachers talk to Julia and not the para. Does that make sense? So they are speaking to her, and we're going to do this. Now the paras, you know, they help her and talk to her too and whatever, but they're, you know, the activities, this is what we're going to do, Julia. So get out your crayons and get out your, you know, do these things. And so that's, I think that's really great. That's, yeah. And it doesn't then set her apart from, and then, you know, here come the other kids talking to Julia. They're not going to talk to the para. They're going to talk to her and communicate with her. So
Exactly.
yeah, during this whole COVID thing, we've had the opportunity to Zoom. We've Zoomed with her special ed teacher, who she just adores. So that's been wonderful. But not too long ago, we also Zoomed with her class. So her regular class. So all the first graders got on with the teacher, and even one of the therapists got on there with us. And that was a lot of fun. And she, you know, she just went a little bit crazy to see every, you know, kind of.
Oh, I bet that was exciting for her to see everyone.
Yeah, so that was fun.
Can you talk about any like assistive technology you have for Julia, or that you've tried to get or we're working on getting?
Sure. We have an assortment. We have 2 wheelchairs and a standing frame, which helps support her to stand for certain amounts of time. It has a tray that she can, you know, play on, work on. We have a light box, which, you know, lights the background very brightly. She has CVI, which is cortical visual impairment. So her eyes function properly. Her vision's not the best, and that's a different issue, but her eyes function properly. But as far as processing, it takes longer to process and it's harder to process. So that light box brings things, you know, shines a bright light behind them and brings them forward so that she can distinguish between things. We have utensils that are bent. They're bigger handled and specially bent so that she, when she raises, self-feeds and raises her arms, you know, to her mouth and everything, she doesn't have to necessarily turn her hand. It goes right in. We have universal cuffs that attach around the hand, and you can put a pencil, a toothbrush, things like that within them so that she can then, it keeps the cuff keeps everything on her hand. We have attempted for the last 3 years or so to get a, it's called an eye gaze device. It's like an iPad or like a little computer, but it has a special component at the bottom that will track her eyes, and she's able to use her eyes to make choices on the computer and even speak through the computer. So it's a communication device. We're still in the process of that. That's pending approval right now. So everybody cross your fingers.
Yes.
We've had the opportunity to trial a couple, and the teachers and the therapists are all very excited about it because we all feel she could be successful with it. So we'll see. We're hoping.
That is great.
Yeah.
So I think what you said too about like as future teachers, just knowing to address your students, talk to them directly, don't like talk to them through a para. I think that's so important because all students want that connection, that support, and they're going to model what they see in the classroom. So if you as a teacher are going through the para, then the kids, like you said, would go through the para and not talk directly to Julia. And Julia can understand everything, and she makes that connection that way, right?
Yes. So very good.
Any other final tips you'd have for future teachers when working with children with special needs?
Don't be scared. the teacher, the regular classroom teacher she has this year, it's only her 2nd year, and she's wonderful. She's done a wonderful job. I don't think, and she told me at the beginning of that, we met with her in the summer and introduced Julia and just talked a little bit. And she said, well, I've never had a child like this in my classroom. And I said, well, neither had I until she was born. So don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. No, So, you know, like, as we were saying just now, just treat them like a regular kid and try to include them as much as possible. And if nothing else, even if you don't feel like you're making any kind of advancements with that particular child, which you would be, but even if you feel that way, you're setting that example for the rest of the class, the other children in that classroom. And that might be what you're striving to teach that year as far as that goes. And that's okay. That's important. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're a great mom. Julia's a great kid. All your kids are fantastic. So thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Well, thank you. That's a great compliment. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Graciela with us. She's going to share a little about who she is and what she does and give us some great insight as a parent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I love talking to our future educators. Go Wildcats. My name is Graciela Berumen, and I work at Washburn University. I am the first generation recruitment and retention specialist. I don't know what that is, but I'm working on it. And I am also a Wildcat. I got my bachelor's and master's at K-State, and I'm currently working on my doctorate.
Great. So you are a K-Stater at heart.
Yes, very much. My blood is purple.
Perfect. All right. Well, tell us a little about your children, Graciela, and some of the issues you've had as a parent.
So I have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old, and we moved to Manhattan because I got a scholarship to attend K-State. And as a single mom, working full-time, going to school full-time, I can bring a little bit of what that experience was like for my children and I. Because of the way that things were going, I can say it has made me more empathetic as an educator, because I know that it's not that parents don't want to help their kids. It's a lot of times that they don't have time or they're busy juggling other things. Like, I was always the parent that did not have the permission slip. I was always the parent that needed that extra reminder. And I was very grateful for the teachers that understood that it was not because I was not interested in my students' education or my children's education. It was not because I didn't care. It was genuinely because I was juggling bowling balls on fire constantly. I have been doing that since 2012. So I do care about my kids. I do want them to succeed, but I'm that parent that needs a little bit of extra help and a little bit of extra reminder.
Yeah, definitely. So as a single parent, can you tell us a little about like what challenges maybe your sons have experienced when it comes to teachers' expectations and their goals for them, maybe not setting high enough or too low?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that just having teachers understand and not make like judgments or, assume that, oh, well, she doesn't care, that's why I'm not hearing from her, or this is why the kid doesn't have his stuff, just understanding, like, I'll still get it done. I just need that extra time, or I need that extra reminder. So just really focusing on becoming that team, mm-hmm. and not jumping into any conclusions or putting people into certain categories before you actually get to know them.
Yeah, excellent. Will you share with us a little about, like, you mentioned your son they're wanting to test your son. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so with that, my 13-year-old, he was young for his class. And because I'm in education, I had heard from other teachers that sometimes, especially with boys, it takes a little bit longer for them to mature. Mm-hmm. So his teacher, actually, I think it was in first grade or kindergarten, I don't remember. It was one of the earlier grades. She actually wanted me to medicate him. Wow. At a parent-teacher conference, which we're not supposed to do. She told me, I really think that you should consider putting your son on medication, because I don't think he's capable of sitting through class. Now, luckily, because of my background and because I've had great educators like Della here, she's my teacher, I love her, along the way, that, help me understand kids and their growth, and that maybe some of them take a little bit longer to mature. I was able to speak up for myself as a parent and say, well, he is young for his class and maybe he's a little bit immature. I'm going to wait this out. And she was pretty insistent. She did just say it once. She said it a couple times, but I didn't listen. And I've always wanted to email her back because he's fine now. He did grow out of it. So I'm really grateful that I did not listen to that. But to me, it's not about like shaming the teacher, because I'm sure in her mind, she thought she was giving me the best advice for my child. But for me as an educator, it's kind of a good warning story of you have to be careful what you say, especially when it comes to things like that, because I always think about what if I would have medicated my son and he didn't need it, because he's fine now. He's excelling in school. He's doing what he's supposed to. He really just needed a little bit more time to grow out of it. As humans, we don't all follow the same, timeline. It might take us a little bit longer. So it's been a really good reminder of that for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's so critical as educators. Sometimes we might have the best interest of what we think of the student is at heart, but if we don't know the whole story or the whole background behind that child and their home life, then we might jump to a conclusion, like I said, that may not be correct or appropriate for the student.
And also that, yeah, we might have an opinion and we might think we know best, but it's still not our child. So we need to respect whatever the parent decides to do and be professional enough to not let that get in the way of that parent-teacher partnership.
Yeah, exactly.
I also had another teacher with my second one that really wanted me to leave him to repeat the grade.
Wow.
Because she felt that it would help him. Like, yeah, he was doing what he was supposed to, but she did not feel that he was confident enough in what he was doing. So she was like, there's nothing wrong with leaving him an extra year. He'll be more confident. If you don't do it, he's gonna hate school and all these things. And again, because I'm in education, I decided not to do that. And I let him go on and he's fine. And and I'm not saying this as a teacher, like I know that we have the best interest of our students at heart, but at the same time, we need to be respectful. And I do think we need to be very careful when we say things like that, because it's humans. We're dealing with humans, we're impacting people's lives every day. So
yeah,
we need to be respectful, be careful what we decide to suggest or not, and then whatever the response is from the parent, still encourage that partnership and still go on together with whatever the parent decides.
Exactly. So as a single parent, what would you want future educators to know?
I would just like them to know that we're trying. I think every parent, just like every teacher, is trying their best. And whatever that looks like depends on our background. It depends on our story. It depends on our own experiences. So communication is really important, because I might assume that we're talking about the same thing or we're thinking about following the same path. That might not be the case because we don't have those same shared experiences in the past. So communication is really important. I also think it's very important to not only communicate the bad, but also the good. If my kid is having a good day, like, let me know. And I know we're busy and we have over 20 kids in our classroom, so sometimes that gets hard, but I also think that's a very important part of this relationship, to not only talk to each other when things are going bad, but also when things are going good, which a lot of teachers have been really good about that. And it just changes everything, because now every time I see you or I see you in my inbox, I'm like, oh God, no, what happened now? What did my kid do now? Right? It's also good things in the inbox. And then it feels more like we're celebrating together and we're together on this journey, both for the good and the bad.
Yeah. So as kind of talking about the inbox, what is your preferred method of communication as a parent? Do you want them to email you, text you? put something on Class Dojo? Like, what do you prefer?
Because I'm so busy, which a lot of parents are. I'm not saying I'm unique or anything. I actually give them my work email because that's the one I probably check the most. And so I think that one's my preferred one. And then I've also had them call, especially right now that we're online.
Yeah.
If they can't get a hold of one of my children or something, they'll call and then I'll give them the phone and then they can talk to them, you know. So that's the other thing that you have to understand, or I have to understand, or whoever, everybody has to understand. So when my son was in kindergarten, he lost his backpack. Now, I wanted him to be responsible and find his backpack because he was my kid that loses everything. It's my second one. I'm starting to see a pattern here. And so I was like, no, it's your backpack. You have to find it. You have to take it, right? So then his teacher sends me a note and says, you have to help him find his backpack because you're the mom. Right. We're teaching different lessons here. Like, yeah, I'm not saying I'm not the mom and I'm not there to help. I am, but this was not the first time he lost his backpack. So it was like, okay, honey, your backpack, your responsibility, find it. So again, just that communication piece of, so that you know what kind of parenting your parents are doing.
Yeah, exactly. And there can definitely be reasons that we may not understand or see. So don't make judgments about the parent or tell them to do something when there may be like a cultural or a personal or an educational reason behind it.
Yeah, definitely. And like, so now that you bring up the cultural thing, so we grew up shaking people's hands. So I'm always like, you know, telling my kids to shake people's hands. And so, you know, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Some people might think it's weird or something, but I always like to remember those things because, you know, if we have students that come from cultures where it's not okay to look people in the eye or it's disrespectful to do certain things, you know, those are just little things to keep in mind so we don't jump into conclusions. Yeah,
definitely. So what would you recommend, or how have you as a parent been an advocate or for yourself, for your children, and maybe for other parents who may not have the same background or knowledge, because you, as you said, are an educator and have a unique insight that some parents may not have?
Yeah, so I'm also trying to raise my children bilingual, and I have seen firsthand what a challenge that is to defend that, because my first son had an IEP, and so the minute there's a delay, it's almost like it's easy to blame the second language, which in this case was the first language. And, oh, well, maybe if you stop trying to teach them Spanish at the same time, that'll fix it, which, as we know, that's not the case, right? Research shows there's so many more benefits to being bilingual, and you can't get that time back. Exactly. So just really being an advocate of, let's not blame bilingualism. Let's focus on this, and really kind of like educating my teachers and my, you know, partners along the way, that let's not look at that as the issue. Let's focus on other things. And then for parents in the community that are also in the same boat, just really kind of creating that community that supports each other when the professionals in the field, right? Because our teachers, parents, we see you guys as professionals in your classroom. If they're telling us, oh, well, why don't you stop teaching them a second language? Just really having that community come together and be like, no, it's okay. That's not why. Let's look at other ways to fix it. Because it is scary. Once you have kids, everything is scary.
Yeah, exactly.
You question yourself and you question your decisions, and is this the right thing to do? So just really trying to encourage others to keep raising their children bilingual, and just kind of all of us educating each other as we go.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I know that there's a lot of societal pressures to be monolingual. to speak English in order to be successful. Like my own parents didn't teach us Spanish because they thought it would put us behind in school. They didn't understand the research that says it actually would have benefited us, like you said. So I think really sending that message to parents is so important, because if we're saying the message, no, they just didn't speak English, then we're actually going to do more harm in the long run. So not only going to lose their language, they're going to lose that cultural connection with their families and their communities.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, what would I like to know? So I'm trying to think of like my first year teaching and what I would have liked to know. And I guess it is that our parents and our families are not the problem, right? And that you can create those partnerships with your families to help move our students forward, because really that's what we want, right? The goal is to help this little human get through school, and our families and our parents can make a great team to do that. They're not the obstacle.
Exactly. I really like that. Having that proactive and positive view of our parents is so important. Well, thank you so much, Graciela, for taking the time to visit with us today. I appreciate your insights. And if you'll just hold on a second.
Yep, hopefully we'll be able to do it in person soon, right?
I know, exactly. But I do love the background behind you. The
Thank you.
great.
Wishful thinking, right?
Yeah.